Okay, so now that I've injured my knee, I feel like it's the right time to actually finally unpack the first days of Ramadan. I feel like I'm stuck between reading more Quran, like as in pages. Like, should I recite, should I memorize, what should I do? The times we should get closer to Allah. And it was 3 times. And he mentioned, like in the hadith, it's mentioned 3 times. It's early morning after Fajr. The whole idea is that we can use that to balance the idea of reflecting what we already know and seeking to understand more. Okay, so I know it doesn't make sense, but I think it's better that I start backwards. Things are making more sense that way. So please listen up. What I've been doing this month is that I've been journaling every single day in Ramadan. Actually, that's a lie. Sometimes I end up not journaling. This is it. The reason why I want to start backward is because on the 10th day, I watched this video titled Okay, so I'm going to take over because she couldn't explain. So basically, everything I learned on day 10 and day 9 connected back to what I discovered on day 3. Now, on day 10 and 9, I learned what is important about the Quran. But on day 3, I had learned how to implement it. So, to fully understand how to best implement what I learned on day 3, we must walk backwards. On day 10, I explored the ultimate goal of the Quran, a reminder on why it was revealed. On day 9, I was reminded of the importance of centering the Quran around our lives. On day 3, I had already found answers on how to implement it in our daily lives, but I didn't know what I had to prioritize. So by combining what I learned those days, I discovered a way to implement the Quran where reflection and memorization don't compete, but coexist. On the 10th day, I watched this video titled The Prophet's Secret Method of Teaching Quran. It wasn't just about reading the verses, memorizing them, and reciting, and that's it. No. So basically, first they tackled 10 verses at a time. He first explained the knowledge and the actions associated with those verses. So you can imagine how important really understanding every single verse and every single surah is, because lately I've been getting so many videos about how to memorize the Quran on my YouTube. And while it's important to memorize the Quran, it's also important to reflect upon it and to to implement it into our lives. And he showed like a pyramid with 3 levels of engagement. On the first one, it's tartil, which is like recitation. And then the second is tadabbur, which is like reflecting on the Quran. And the third one is amal, like the actions. Just goes to show that reciting is just one way of engaging with the Quran. And so the ultimate purpose is not recitation, but reflecting, understanding, and living its meanings. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I was watching a podcast and I'll link it down below. Some of the ending points were about how we have to implement the Quran in our lives and make our days revolve around it. The same way we do with Salah, and it's actually, I'm surprised that not so many people have mentioned it that way, because we're always like, oh, make your day revolve around Salah, or around the 5 daily prayers. But then the Quran is as important as our 5 daily prayers. So I'm glad that they brought that up. And this whole idea of making our day revolve around the Quran made me think of Medina. So the thing with Medina is that the whole city builds around Masjid al-Nabawi. So basically it's Masjid al-Nabawi here in the middle, and then the whole city just builds around it. Actually, that was one of the first things we found out when we landed in Medina. We were trying to catch a bus to make it to the city and from the airport, and there was a bus station and they had this whole map. I'll put it in the screen so you can see it. Yeah, I think Medina is like a good visualization. So I think Medina is a good visualization of how our lives should revolve around not just the Quran but Islam in general. So yeah, that's something to think of. Yeah. Yeah, so basically what I learned those 2 last days of the 10 days was something I could really tie to what I learned on the 3rd day of Ramadan. I'll explain, but first, if you're like me, I don't know, I feel like I'm stuck between reading more Quran, as in pages, or actually totally engaging with the surah and fully diving into it. And so I feel like it's a struggle to really know what to do. I mean, I know that whatever you do, as long as you do it with the right intentions, it's good. But then I don't really like to always just read through the Quran and not totally engage with it, if it makes sense. And that's one thing. But then the other is that I'm quite slow at reading Arabic. So, you know those people that have goals of reading the whole Quran? I'm not on that race at all. So that's what I feel like I have to choose my battles wisely. And actually, sometimes when you think about reading slow, especially the Quran, it feels like it's a burden or a struggle. But lately I've been embracing it. And actually I've realized that when I read slow, I can actually grasp the words much more. Khutbah about deepening your relationship with the Quran and nourishing your soul or something. I'll link it down below. Highly 10,000, million, billion, trillion, infinite. Recommend you to watch that one. Wait. I have to put this up. I don't know if you can see. It's because I took too many notes. I ended up just sticking them on the page. Okay, so basically, he was mentioning a beautiful hadith from the Prophet. But what I wanna briefly mention from it is the times we should get closer to Allah. And it was 3 times. And he mentioned, like in the hadith, it's mentioned 3 times. It's early morning after Fajr, evening after Asr, and on the last 1/3 of the night. And basically, I feel like that gave me so much clarity about this whole issue of should I recite, should I memorize, what should I do during Ramadan? What that made me think of is exploitation and exploration. So, in the sense of the Quran, I think of exploitation, right? Like what you already know as those parts of the Quran that you have already read and engage with in some way. While exploration is about reading new surahs, just learning anything new of Islamic knowledge. What I figured out is that I could give a time of the day, let's say early morning after Fajr, is the time to engage with the parts I already know of the Quran. So maybe it can be reading a surah I've read before, reading its tafsir, but also memorizing. The other time, for example, let's say evening after Asr, which was one of the times when we should get closer to Allah. That time can be spent reading new surahs and engaging with unknown parts of the Quran. The whole idea is that through both exploring the Quran and exploiting what we already know about the Quran, we can use that to balance the idea of reflecting what we already know and seeking to understand more. So what I've been doing personally is that in the mornings after Fajr, I try to dedicate it to memorizing Quran. The times in the evening after Tarawih, I use them to read new surahs and just gain more knowledge. I feel like for me that really strikes that balance between reading the Quran and reflecting upon it. Tying those 10 days together, I've now not just become more aware of how important the Quran is, but also how to implement it on a sustainable way, which is the whole goal of Ramadan as well. I mean, we have to strive, but then we have to also build habits that are, inshallah, long life lasting. And so I feel like those last 10 days really tied everything together. Sorry for cutting off so suddenly, but this is the end of the video. I'm still trying out the method, but I just want to take you along my train of thoughts, and perhaps it can inspire you to implement the Quran in your life in a way that's easy for yourself too. In some way that you can enjoy the path and picking up the flowers of the spring of the heart. Thank you for watching this far. Did I make this one on purpose? No. Goodbye. Assalamu alaikum.